Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are continuing to count down our top 100 favorite board games of all time.
And today we are counting down the 30s, going from 40 all the way to 31.
And of course, if you take 2 3s and you make them hug, you get an 8, and that is the 80s, where our game last week of summer is set. And I don't know if I've mentioned this game in these videos yet, but it is on Kickstarter right now. We're really excited about it. We hope you are too. So please go and check that out. But for right now, let's check out our number 40.
My number 40 is Imperial Settlers: Empires of the North. And this is an adorable looking game, and it's an asymmetric game. The base game comes with 6 different factions that all play very differently. They all have their own deck of cards, and you are building your tableau and engine building using those cards. So some of them might let you play a lot of cards that go into the fields and you collect a whole bunch of resources. Other times you might be putting out a whole bunch of cards that you then have to exhaust. You may also be playing cards as like a one-time special bonus that ties to the action wheel, which is really interesting. But each of them will also have point scoring cards that will all score in different ways. So for some faction, you're kind of able to consistently get a couple of points. Other ones, you really have to build your engine, but then you're able to get like a lot of points later on. So it's really interesting to try and figure out how the different factions play, and it is my number 40.
My number 40 is Botanic, and this is a 2-player specific game. We play a lot of games at 2 players, so we like that already, but it also has really nice artwork. It has this kind of like Dr. Seuss-y, but like classier vibe to it, and how it plays is really clever. So this is a tile placement game. And how you're getting your tiles is you've got these 3 rows in the middle. And so you've got tiles on your side, tiles on their side, and tiles in the middle. And when you add a tile to the middle, that releases tiles on either side. And what I love about that is sometimes you kind of are set up where you know that the other person wants something, so you kind of make them give you something. But sometimes you make them take something that they don't really want right now, and it really causes them trouble. And I love that. I love in a game where you can give someone something and it causes them almost as much trouble as if you didn't give them something at all. So this game's got a lot of like real sneaky ways to mess with each other, a really interesting kind of almost abstract game, drafting, but then also the tile placement and the thinking about that as well. Such a clever game. It is my number 40.
My number 39 is Barren Park, and we've had this in our collection for a while, and it is still great. It's designed by Phil Walker Harding, and he does such a good job of making like accessible games that people who are already gamers still really enjoy as well. And Barren Park is no exception. First of all, you're building a bear park, which is pretty adorable. And I love that everything you're doing is just tile placement. Like there's no drafting, there's no other kind of mechanic. On your turn, you put a tile on one of your tiles, and whatever you cover is the next tiles that you get to grab. And it is a bit of a race as well, because everything you're doing is more valuable the earlier you take it, or the earlier you can like fill a square and get one of those bear statues. So everyone is racing to do all of those things. And I recommend the expansion because it adds grizzly bears, which have pretty interesting shapes. And it is my number 39.
My number 39 is Final Girl, and Final Girl is it's a solo only game, and so mostly I just play this, and it has a terrific theme because it's all connected to slasher movies, and I love slasher movies, particularly 80s slasher movies, and this has got boxes that are very close to being Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, and really most of the recognizable slashers that you would hope that there would be. I will say though that it kind of surprises me that I like this as much as I do because it is so much dice rolling. And usually I'm not in love with dice rolling. There is a bunch of stuff you can do to help mitigate that, and there is also like the randomization of the cards as well. So there's a lot of randomness. But because it's so quick and because it's so like engaging, I don't mind that randomness, and I don't mind that the game beats me more than I beat it. I actually really like that about this game. And every game tells kind of like a little mini story, and I just get really into it and really immersed in it. And I've got too many boxes of it now, but I wouldn't sell them for anything. And it is my number 39.
My number 38 is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. And we have always been on the lookout for racing games. When I grew up playing video games, I primarily only played racing games. And so I really wanted to find a board game that really worked well at 2 players that was a racing game. And I think this has taken the spot as my favorite racing game. At 2 players, there is a really easy bot system that you can use for the other cars. And I recommend playing with all of the cars. And it does such a good job of simulating a real race where you really have to manage your cards and your heat levels for going around all of the corners. But what I really appreciate is the base game came with so much stuff. It came with 4 different maps. It came with a championship system so you could play through multiple tracks. It also came with a way of being able to like add system upgrades to those races, which I really like, that you can have these like special powerful cards. There's also sponsorship cards that you can get, which again can be really helpful to have one-time use cards. So I feel like for the base game, so much came in that made it so replayable. And we still also really like the expansions that add even more. And Heat is my number 38.
My number 38 is 7 Wonders Duel. And I'm really on the fence about whether to do the old school 7 Wonders Duel or the newer Lord of the Rings version of 7 Wonders Duel. And I really like both of them. I think I'm going to do the old school, but mostly just because you did the Lord of the Rings one and I want us to talk about both of them. So in the old school, and why I like it so much, first of all, is this is the first time I remember there being a game that took a game that you kind of needed a bunch of people to play and boiled it down so that it was so playable at 2. And now, obviously, that started a whole giant trend. There's so many of these, but this, I think, was really the first one. And it does such a terrific job because it still is the heart of 7 Wonders. You still have those 3 different ways that you can win with the science, the military, and just getting points, and you've still got the wonders that you're actually building. But I think where this really comes into its own is when you add the Pantheon expansion, and I think that's probably why I like this still a little bit more than the Lord of the Rings one, because that gives you a way to break up the cards in the middle, so you don't necessarily have to take that next one. I think Lord of the Rings actually does do this a little bit too, but I still like Pantheon because I also just like the Greek gods as well. And we have just played this so much. This was one of the early games we got, and we just played it over and over and over and over. And we still continue to play this. Even with the Lord of the Rings one, we still play the original one as well. And so I still really like it, and it is my 38.
My number 37 is Near and Far. And I think this does such a good job of being like an adventure in about an hour. And this was the first Red Raven game that we had played. And it had felt so different from any other game we had played before. I really like that you are these different characters and there's these kind of 2 different phases that you're doing. You can be in town and you can recruit characters, you can get like a tortoise, you can go to the mine, but then you try and stock up. So you go on your adventure and you're exploring this map, and it comes with so many different maps, and you're trying to do these quests. But the quests are great because it's only like 2-3 sentences, enough to give you a little bit of a sense of a story, but not enough that it's like entirely narrative driven. And I think the balance is just right. And I really like that you can play it as a character campaign where you're progressing through your character's story. And it's my number 37.
My number 37 is Downforce. And I love Downforce because it is just chaos. So in Downforce, you've all got cars, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, and you're racing them around this track. But how you're racing them is you play a card, and that card has a whole bunch of different color cards on it. And it may not even include yours, but you have to play all your cards before, or maybe you don't play all of them, but you just have a finite number of cards that you have to play by the end of the race. And when you play them, you move all the cards in that order, but you do not have to move them optimally. So you're moving cards you don't want to win in really dumb ways, and you're moving your cards as well as you can. You're trying to set yourself up, you're trying to set them up to be blocked. I love all that chaos, but what's really fun is at a third of the way through the race, you start to bet on cards. And often what happens is you bet on cards that aren't yours because maybe you're not winning, or maybe you think, you know, I don't have a lot of my color left over, but I got an awful lot of this other color, so I'm gonna push them ahead. So I love that too, that you're helping other people that don't even know that you're helping them, and you don't really have a choice in helping them sometimes. It's so silly, it's so great at a convention, and it is my 37.
My number 36 is Courtisans. And normally I'm not a big fan of mean games, and this game is an exception because it is incredibly mean. And I think it's because of that I like it, is you don't have a choice basically to not be mean. This is a great quick card game that's really easy to introduce to people. On your turn, you have 3 cards to play. You have to play 1 card to yourself, you have to give somebody a card, and you have to play 1 card to the center, either to try and be positive points or to be negative points. So obviously what you're trying to do is make sure that the cards that other people have end up being negative points. And I love that usually the scores are like -3, -1, maybe like +2. Everyone is trying to tank everybody else, and no one really gets their feelings hurt because there is just so much meanness. And this is my number 36.
My number 36 is Marvel Champions, and there's so much out there for this game. This is one of those games where it could pretty much be the only game you owned, and you would have more than you could ever play. I've had to stop buying stuff, which really hurt me because they started to release all the X-Men stuff right when I felt like I had too much, so I still did buy a few of those. But all of the characters play different. They all have their own deck of cards. Those are all focused in different ways. And then all of these bad guys play different, and they are all hard. There's maybe like 1 or 2 that aren't that hard, and boy, have we fought those 1 or 2 a lot, but everyone else is really hard. But I also like how you have to kind of find the synergies between your characters, that some of them are attack characters. They kind of have 3 set things where they're like attack, support, or I don't know, the other one. But also there's like a ton of different like nuances within that attack. Maybe in the first set made sense, but now that all smushes together. All the characters are so different, so interesting. And yet you can just dive into this forever, just over and over and over. And Marvel Champions is my number 36. And we're gonna come back with our number 35 right after this very important message.
My number 35 is Wingspan, and I really like all of the games in the Span series. I really like that Finspan takes a game and has made it more streamlined, and that Wormspan has increased the complexity a little bit, but I'm going with Wingspan because it's like the sweet spot in the middle. But I am going specifically with the Oceania expansion because I like that it just fixed a couple of things I had with the base game. But it's just a really accessible, interesting nature-themed game. You are building out your card tableau of birds, and building out your tableau is going to influence your action selection. So I really like how those 2 mechanics mix and how you can use different strategies, and that everything that are tied to the birds actually like make sense. Like the food that they're eating are probably the food that they would eat. And so you are like sneakily even learning a little bit. And it is my number 35.
My number 35 is Star Wars Rebellion, and this is a game that we do not get to play that much because it's such a giant game. It takes quite a while, and we tend to forget how to play, and we have to relearn it from scratch each time. But when we do remember how to play, we remember that it is terrific because this is just, it's such a Star Wars game. One player's Empire, one player's Rebels. The Empire gets tons of ships at the beginning, and they're just trying to like squash down the Rebels and like impose their will and build their Death Star. Whereas the Rebels start with not very much, and it's kind of scary to be the Rebels because you just got these few little ships with these Star Destroyers and stuff all over the place, and you gotta like just kind of survive for long enough that the rebellion's gonna really take hold, and then I guess long-term fight against the Empire, or just blow up the Death Star. And I love that that's in there too as one of the possible, that's like the big crazy win condition if you can actually make that happen. And I really like it with the expansion that just tightens up the fighting a little bit and adds all those characters from Rogue One. And I love, love, love Rogue One. So I really like having all of them in there as well. I wish we could get this to the table a little bit more, but it's also nice that it's like this annual treat that we finally get to do. And it is my 35.
My number 34 is Parade.
And my number 34 is Parade.
Crossover.
This is our first crossover. I don't even think we had one last year.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting. All right, you talk about it.
Okay, so Parade is a beautiful, classy looking card game that is Alice in Wonderland theme. And it's a hard one to explain. Do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, so in Parade, you got a parade of cards. And it's like you said, loosely based on Alice in Wonderland. And you've got to add a card to the back of the parade every single turn. And then you might have to take cards. So if there are other cards that are a lower number than what you played or the same color beyond the number that you played. So if you play like a 3, you ignore 3 cards and then you worry about the cards after that. And so really what you're trying to do is not take cards and force the other person to take cards. But if you take cards, you want to take the most cards of whatever that is, because then they're only 1 point each instead of counting as whatever their face value is. So it's got this really neat thing where you don't want to take cards and then you really want to take a lot of one kind of card.
Yeah, so the dynamic definitely changes, and it gets like a bit stressful when the parade keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and then you realize you are taking cards. So you definitely have to try and maximize which cards you're taking. Then as the end is nearing, you're keeping an eye on what cards everybody else has to make sure that if you've got like the 9 and 10 of a suit, that you've hopefully have the most of that suit.
Yeah, and then you end up like racing for a kind of card and then someone else ties you. You both have to score when that happens. Yeah, there's a lot of fun interaction with this. It's so pretty as well. It's a really pretty game. It's a bit hard to find, but they re-release with kind of a new edition every, I don't know, so often. And so it is well worth checking out. If you like just slightly quirky, slightly different card games, this one's really cool.
And it is our number 34. My number 33 is Istanbul Big Box Edition specifically. And Istanbul is an interesting game where the board looks completely different every time you play because all of the different shops that make up the market that you're visiting all get randomly put out. But what's fascinating is it's a mechanic I hadn't played before where you have like a stack of assistants. And whenever you move, you either have to drop off an assistant or pick one up, and you can do the action on that tile. So it is an efficiency puzzle because if you can make sure you're either picking up or dropping off all the time, you don't have a wasted action of having to collect everybody. And because the game board changes every game, you can never really do like the same loop twice. So you're always trying to look for these loops and try and get rubies because whoever fills their board with rubies first wins. And I just really like how different this game is, and it is my number 33.
My number 33 is viticulture, and specifically viticulture with Tuscany, or the Viticulture Essential Edition. And I really do think that that expansion is essential, especially at 2 players. And I think the main thing that it adds is just other ways to do everything that you've got to do. So if you haven't played viticulture, you're making wine. And you're starting out, you're planting grapes, you're growing those grapes, you're harvesting those grapes, you're aging that wine, you're selling that wine off to people, all the things that you would expect to do with wine. But with Tuscany, it brings in the card play just a little bit more. It gives you a few more options of things to do, because what can happen is you can just get kind of blocked off and it can get in your way. But this makes that not happen as much. You can also have your own special buildings that you can do different stuff with each game. I really like all of that. And even though I have basically no interest in wine, I'm sorry, I'm just not that classy, but I still get really into the theme here because it ties so much to the mechanics. And so this is my 33.
My number 32 is Carcassonne, and this is very much a classic game, but it's a classic for a reason. We still play this game a ton, and I think what works really well is if you play against players who are of the same level, because we play this together a lot, and it is just so cutthroat and so competitive. Because I've said before, I don't necessarily like mean games, but we are just so mean to each other in this one. And it is just so fiercely competitive for taking over cities. And we have so many different expansions as well. So I like being able to introduce sometimes a small difference, sometimes a very big difference. And Carcassonne is my number 32.
My number 32 is Horrified, and this is such a good gateway co-op game, and it is a fairly simple game, but we still play this quite a bit. And really what you're doing is you're just moving around, picking up stuff, using that stuff to deal with different monsters. But the monsters are really where this game gets interesting, because they all have these like little fairly simple puzzles, but I still find them really engaging to mix and match. My favorite is still the original Universal monsters. But the newer one, the Dungeons and Dragons, might actually be my second favorite now, because those have really clever designs for those different monsters. And with the newer ones, you can mix and match them, which I really like. Still, Universal is my favorite, but we do play this one more than you would expect. And it comes down to the wire a lot in this game as well, which I think is why we just keep on playing it. And it is my 32.
My number 31 is Beacon Patrol, which is a really interesting cooperative tile placement game where you're trying to make a map. And it has this like really simple but interesting line art style. And so you're playing tiles and you always have to move your boat onto a tile that you play. But because this area has like sea and land masses, you can sometimes get a bit stuck. So you really have to communicate and work together. And it's a game where you get assigned like a different rank for your score, so you wouldn't think you could lose. However, Sean has decided which scores count as a loss and which ones count as a win. And I could play this again and again, trying to get that highest ranked score that we have yet to obtain. Hopefully we'll get it someday soon. And it's my number 31.
My number 31 is Spirit Island. So we got a bit of a run of co-op games here, but unlike the last two that we talked about, Spirit Island is not a super simple game. This is quite a complex game to get your head around, especially when you add all the different bits and pieces. And we've played this a lot. We're still not adding all the different bits and pieces because it is hard. And really, I think what makes it so interesting, well, first of all, the idea of the game is you're these islands, you've got people coming to your island, you don't want them there. So you're trying to get rid of them to make the island safe for the like original inhabitants. And you're all these really different spirits. So you're some that move very fast and like attack. You're some that use the different elements around you, like the oceans or whatnot, to affect the invaders in different ways. There's some that just makes it harder for them to build. There's some that make them really scared and try and scare them off the island. And so you've got to work with your partner or partners to try and balance how you're using those different effects. And it's got this interesting ebb and flow flow as well, where it's so hard at the start that it feels too hard, and then finally you kind of turn the tide. But I think what's made this really interesting for me this year is I've started to play it a little bit more solo, and it's really interesting to play this true solo and have some of those different spirits that really focus on one thing and don't really have access to some of the other things, and still seeing if you can win and solve the puzzle that way. Such an interesting game and so different from everything else out there, and it is my 31. And that is it. That gets us down to the 30s. So next time we're really getting up there. We are going to be talking about the 20s.
Thank you so much for watching. And just a reminder, our Kickstarter for last week of summer is live right now. So please do check it out. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.